screen. Okay, getting there. Welcome everyone again. Right, we'll just dive straight in. So the links that you all know and love, they're there just for reference. If you want to sponsor MicroPython, go sponsor. Damien will say thank you personally next time we meet. You already know that because Damien went first and gave a cool talk. Oh yeah, mic check. So I've got a fancy new microphone, so I should be coming through loud and clear. I don't have the boom arm yet, so it's not quite as clear as it should be, but not too bad.
You sound like a radio presenter, Matt.
Yeah, I need to work on my my deep voice sort of. Yeah, I can't think of any of the radio presenters at the moment, but yeah. I bought this just for reference because I'm spending a lot of time in Zoom lately with work, and so I might as well sound good. And yeah, I was having a bit of problems with this microphone, so I need to replace it anyway. Anywho, season of docs. So Nitty's still continuing her work. We've had a few problems in the last, I guess, month because she's a new engineer. She's fresh, and she ran into all the things that you would normally do as a new engineer, like struggle a little bit with Git. So we've been unpicking. Well, Damien's been doing most of that work, but unpicking most of her problems that she's been having with Git. So slowed down a little bit over the last little while, but yeah, she's been making progress on most of these. There's PRs open for all of them. The links are here, so you can go check them out. I think since the last time we met, the only one that's been added is the PEP availability. So this is a suggestion we had to try to make it clearer as to what things in MicroPython are supported. So I've got a task to open up a few issues to list all the different PEPs and changes. They don't actually make, so with CPython, when they make a change, they'll go to 3.7 or 3.8 or whatever. A lot of the major features are described in the PEP system. So there's a proposal for an improvement that goes out for review, blah, blah, blah. And they'll tick that off as part of a release. But that's not all that goes in a release. There's often things that aren't tracked very well. There's things that are tracked in their bug tracker. And they publish this quite long report on those changes. So I'm trying to make a nice succinct way to list all of those changes for each of the major releases of CPython. And then we can cross them off when MicroPython has some of those supported. And indeed, we already do have some of those features supported for 3.7, 3.8, 3.9. So Nitty's work here will be to distill some of that sort of into a table that you can sort of look and see what MicroPython has and doesn't have. Because we get this asked a lot, what version is MicroPython at? And it's, well, 3.4 is the baseline, but we've got things that are even in 3.9. So hopefully that'll help. She has also made improvements to all these other modules that were started in the last month or two. Matt's new hardware, everyone's favorite. Well, it's my favorite section. You talk about things that I have played with now. Hang on a sec. It's always better when we can see these things, but Silicon Labs released the Thunderboard Sense 2. Ripping little development board, particularly since this company have got a bit of a reputation for releasing expensive development boards. This one is inexpensive. It's $32 from Mouser. Don't know if you guys can see that, but if you need to, you can zoom in. It's quite small. And it's packed with a whole bunch of sensors, which is pretty cool. Humidity and temperature, there's a whole list there, but sort of all the common sort of sensors are available on this board. And yeah, for $32, it's pretty good. I think when I went and had a look at this board a while ago, they have an official development kit, and they're in the hundreds of dollars. And it was just an area that they really lacked getting people involved with, just targeting that professional end of the market. So you might remember we talked about Trammell Hudson, who's that prolific engineer who took apart his IKEA gear. He did that because they used this processor, and so he made a port of MicroPython. So yeah, I'm hoping to take his port and run it on this board and see. Might have to make some changes, but it's a neat little board. There was also, there's a note down there that there was an intern from Scilabs who was posting that they had completed a rough and ready port of MicroPython to support this board. Unfortunately, I can't get in touch with him. I don't know what's happened to it. He didn't publish the repository, but I'm going to still try and reach out to that guy, because if that's in existence, that could be another way we could try and run our favorite system on these little embedded boards. Okay, and these things have really good radios, little BLE radios. It's a pretty slow processor though, you'll notice. Anyway, the Renesas. So this is a board by a company called Renesas. They're kind of known for, this must be really noisy. These guys are kind of known for doing a lot of professional stuff. They do a lot of processes that go into cars, I pulled apart my washing machine recently and it had a monstrous version of one of these chips. They typically have a lot of I/O. This one's got 110 GPIO, relatively fast, 120 meg Cortex M4. Reasonably powerful sort of chip, but I cannot get out of my bag. Sorry, done. So it's a much larger board because there's a lot of I/O to break out. They've got, I think, a handful of cap touch that come out of this thing. They've got one that's supported on this board, built-in J-Link. Also, the Thunderboard Sense 2 also had a built-in J-Link as well, as is common for these development boards these days. It's got full-speed USB. Yeah, it's just a nice little development kit. Now, the reason I was interested in this one is because it appears that Renesas themselves have a port. There's a PR in MicroPython to support this board and another one. It is a monstrous PR. There's over 500 files have been changed. So I thought I'd try and help out Damien by getting it at least running on this board and seeing if what they've published actually works. But yeah, it's pretty cool that they've supplied that PR. We need to try and get that up into mainline. $60. I also had to sign something that I wasn't going to use this for nefarious purposes. Don't know what that was about, but Mouser, it's under some shipping restriction, so you got to sign something, send it to Mouser before you does sell it to you. Okay. In a similar vein, so the Amoeba RTL 8722DM, which is a lovely sounding, easy to roll off the tongue sort of label, is this board here. This is the one I've had for a little while. I bought it earlier on in the year because I'm really interested in the specs of this thing. Bought it from Seed. Seed are pushing this particular chipset. And they released another board recently, this mini board. And so I've had this as one of the many lists of devices to port MicroPython to. The reason it was of interest to me was because it's a dual core Cortex M33 and M23. It supports Wi-Fi and BLE, so the second core is used to control the radio. The neat thing is that it has 5 gig Wi-Fi, so it's got dual band Wi-Fi. It's one of the few chips that seems to support that. So that was the part that was of interest to me. But the module itself actually has like a bunch of GPIO. It's got its usual range of UART, SPI, all the rest of it. And also throws in a couple of other little blobs of hardware for capacitive touch, key matrix support, and an LCD module to help shift LCD data through to a handful of varieties of LCDs. And Seed are also using this in the WIA terminal, which is a popular board of theirs as well.
What development support is there for it?
So they support, they've just started supporting Arduino, but they've also started supporting MicroPython.
Right.
So they...
It's worth noting Amoeba are Realtek.
Yes, sorry, I should have, yeah.
It's a department of Realtek themselves, and these are very cheap chips. Yes,
they are. Yep. I don't know how much the chips are. I haven't found them standalone, but I'm sure they are cheap. They're also cheap, and Realtek are actually known for having pretty decent Wi-Fi too. So yeah, it's a really interesting chipset.
I'm curious to know how low power the radios are. Like
so
ESP32.
I haven't measured anything yet. I haven't seen anything that quantifies it, but they do make a point of saying that it's low power, probably because they're using the M33 and M23, which have a little bit, they consume a little less juice than the Cortex M4 and the M0, or at least can. They have forked it in an awkward way, which is unsurprising. I think it might have been their first fork. So they haven't actually hit the fork button. They've just copied and pasted, it looks like. And they've also reworked a couple of the directories. They're not quite in line with where we want things. But they're also open to getting it fixed and having some guidance on how to do it. So it looks like they're quite interested in collaboration. I've spoken with Simon Z, who appears to be the lead developer there. They seem pretty serious about it. They've got like a landing page which has like a whole bunch of examples, how to get started, how to deploy MicroPython to it. You got custom documentation, like read the docs documentation for their own fork. And there's a forum that they're accepting. People can write whatever they want in there. The forums for the chip in general, not just for MicroPython, but there are a few MicroPython questions there. And yeah, it seems like it's pretty feature rich. There's all the sorts of things we would expect out of a full featured port. So yeah, I'm kind of interested in playing with this a little bit. Looks quite good. This little picture here is just a reminder that they actually do have variants of this chip. So the one that is in this development board is a dual core with PS RAM and so on, but you can figure that out from the number that you get. The chip that they use in their WIO terminal is a single die one. I don't know exactly what that means, but I presume it means it doesn't have PS RAM or flash. So it's probably just the onboard flash. But it's all right because it's got quite a bit. Yeah, 0.5 mega RAM, 2 mega flash. I couldn't figure out how much flash is on board versus external, at least before the talk tonight. And there are some variants. This end of the spectrum is where we're sort of looking at. Yeah, so this is the chipset that we're using, but they also have a bunch of Cortex M3 based ones and a couple of Cortex M4 based ones. So they've got like a history of playing in this space. It also supports BLE5. I'm not yet sure which parts of BLE5. It's very easy to claim that. It's very difficult to figure out exactly what they mean there. Most of the features that you sort of think about when you're talking about BLE5 are optional. So yeah, I need to dig into the data sheet a little more.
The website says just 5.0, doesn't go into anything. I'm looking at the moment.
Yep. Yeah, it's always a bit tricky getting information out of Seed. And it was actually really confusing trying to figure out if this was a Cortex M4 or an M33 because it made the claim that it was Cortex M4 compatible in a lot of places. And I was like, what does that mean? But
I'm actually on Realtek's website at the moment trying to find out more information.
If you could, that'd be great. I've logged in there.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Well, they've got data sheets and stuff, but you can get the data sheet too. That's available. You've got to log in on the Amoeba site,
Right, that's fine.
Which is fine. I did that ages ago, and I don't know what my login is, and the password recovery system doesn't seem to work. So I've been trying to get access back there for a while now, and it's failing. Anyway, that looks like a really cool chip to have, especially with the 5 gig support. There's been a few people that have asked for that. And the boards are cheap. I don't think I put the prices here, did I? Oh yeah, $30 and $24. Why the Mini is more expensive, I'm not really sure. It's not really Seed's style. It does have an audio jack. This thing does support I2S as well. And it's also got an SD card on the flip side as well. But this one's got a lot more stuff broken out. So yeah, whatever.
It says on their website $29.99, but then it says, oh, it's a promo code. You can get it for $17.99.
It says that in the image. I had to actually remove it from the image, but yeah, I don't know if that's legit or not.
If you enter RTL 8722DM, you get it for $17.99.
There you go. Great. Awesome. Anyway, neat chip. I want to play with it. Xeon, your moment of fame. Xeon's recently released the S2 Neo. I think you showed off the Feather last month, not before.
No, ages ago. was released last year.
Okay,
The Feather S2, yeah. But
Feather S2?
this
Sorry,
is
the Feather S2, I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
that ages ago?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
time's
that's
flying.
it.
It's
Remember
Blur's
last year?
Day today. How many days have we had in this March
It's all a blur.
2020?
It's all a blur. Yeah. It's my updated. Well, it's not updated. It's so I started designing this when I couldn't get any more flash or PS RAM because of the silicon shortage. And of course, my Feather S2's got external flash and PS RAM. And then I got this finished, and then I was able to get flash and PS RAM to keep making the Feather S2. So I didn't know what to do with this board because it's using a chip that's got built-in flash and RAM. And so I stuck a little RGB matrix on it.
I don't know if you
Cool.
can say that, but
You're
it
just
is,
running at the moment, yeah.
yeah.
And I just did. I've just been updating all the
Cute.
code. I'm about to port this to MicroPython. This might be back to front, but I just did. I don't know if you're able to see it. It should say hello. When you first
Cool.
plug it in.
Oh, actually, I need that. Can you give me that code?
Yeah,
Good.
I sent you the link already. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, good.
So yeah, basically, I've been working on an animation library and a custom animation library and a custom just like messaging library, so you can, it's a challenge getting a nice.
Hey, Mike's got one too. They're everywhere.
Where's mine?
Who doesn't have an S2 Neo, really? I mean,
Okay, hands up who paid for theirs.
uh,
Right, see, no one's putting their hands up. Right, that's the problem. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's okay. So yeah,
Sion, there's an
working
agreement
on-
tonight. Sion's been kind enough to send everyone who attended tonight a Feather S2 Neo. Just submit your address and he'll send one right out.
Take a list. Take a list of names. Yeah. It's been fun. Yeah, I've been. It ships with CircuitPython on it, but doing the same libraries for CircuitPython and MicroPython. And there is a MicroPython firmware for this now as well on downloads. If you go to micropython.org/downloads/all, you can find them all there. So I am keeping MicroPython up to date on this as well. It's been a lot of fun. It's been challenging making a 5x5 matrix useful for people. So I've been building a whole lot of custom font glyphs and little animation routines, and I'm halfway through writing a little, it's pointless, absolutely pointless, a little logic probe display. So you can show high and low states up and down on pins when you change their states. Like totally pointless on a 5x5 display, but it's cute, it's fun, it looks cute. So yeah.
It's neat. It's a really neat little board and usual high quality, good design. Great for low power because you can turn off various bits and pieces. So if you need to drive this thing to sleep, it can consume very little power. Yeah, great. Love it.
Thanks, Matt.
Moving right along. It's slightly different end of the spectrum, but in the same ballpark. These are the Wemos S2 boards. This is Sion's lower end competition, I guess. They're cheap as sorry.
The bane of
your existence, yeah. So these are great little boards, great little throwaway boards, right? They're cheap, $5.50 and $10 with the display. The Mini actually has more I/O than the S2. What do they call this one? The Pico. Also hard to get a hold of. Looks like everyone's affected by this chip shortage, and you'll see that as a common theme. Some of this hardware I'm talking about is a bit hard to get a hold of.
Because everyone's been buying 50 at a time because they're so cheap. That's why.
That's true.
Are they compatible with the Lorwyn
They are
32 minis?
pin compatible with our board that we use for the standard ESP32. Yep.
Awesome.
Which is great. They've also, we must have tried like 3 times to submit a board PR for this guy. I don't know if they got it in across the line yet, but if not, I can see Mike's chomping at the bit to get one in, aren't you, Mike? Yeah, thought so. Yeah, look, handy boards to have. So you can develop things on this and then run it on the Feather S2, which is better quality. They also released an e-paper device, which is to target some of their other the larger boards. Can't get a hold of them now. I can't remember how much they cost. They're not publishing the price on the board, but I know some people here would have picked one up. Did anyone know how much they paid for it?
13 US.
13 US, which is pretty cheap for a little e-paper device. So yeah, have you made it do anything yet, Mike?
Almost.
Great. Is that being driven MicroPython FrameBuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
With
Is
the
it a driver
alignment,
you've had to
yeah.
make, or has it been out there already?
I'm writing it from scratch.
Cool. Nice. Hopefully not too difficult to interface with.
No, should just be a frame buffer.
Great.
Is that before or after you finish your TFT native driver?
Yeah, progressed in the queue.
How many things ahead of it? 5,000.
This one working last night. My old Nokia written in C.
Ah, cool.
Very good.
There's a little Nokia display. That's great. All right, moving along from cheap to not so cheap. The Bangle JS, this little watch. We've seen a few watches come out. Here's another one. The nice thing about this is that someone finally is using a Nordic 52840, which is a decently powerful chip. It's got enough RAM and flash to be fun. Interesting LCD display. It's an always-on LCD, but 3-bit color. I haven't been able to get a lot of information about that particular display, but it looks pretty interesting. They've got a bunch of sensors and peripherals on this thing. It is expensive because it's a developer edition, so they've basically made a limited run ahead of their official run. But if you want to get in and play with Bangle JS or port MicroPython to it, there's a few people that seem to be interested in doing that. So it's kind of like an easier to develop, but easier to work on device, like the what was the other one called? The Pine Time watch. Yeah, because they've got the full SWD on the back of it, so you just plug in and can debug straight on the device. Looks quite neat. Should run MicroPython really nicely, apart from the fact we still need to port the Bluetooth library to Nordic. Things Network. So Orkan was on the Amp Hour podcast. He works for the Things industry, which do a whole bunch of stuff with LoRa. The generic Node is a device they've advertised quite a while ago. Looks like a really interesting device. It can be IP65, tons of flash. Like it's pretty much like a commercial drop-in device. It's meant to work on the Things Network. So, and with LoRaWAN, you can have it so it spits out data over 10Ks or whatever is supported. They've got a few sensors on board. It's based around the STM32WL range. I think they're about $75 at the moment. They're intending, if you can get a hold of them. So their current run is they've published, or they've created a short run of these things of, I think it's 500 for this batch. They haven't yet advertised those, but the thinking is they'll hit around $75 or $80 US. But they're intending on their larger run to go for about $50, and to be sort of drop in on the Things Network very easily. So yeah, looks like a nice device. I reached out to Orkan. I've been registered for the generic Node notifications for a while, but I reached out to him after the podcast and said thanks, and said when's the MicroPython coming? And if you want a hand, we know some people. So it looks like they got to get Arduino across the line, which is kind of a commercial reality these days, even though it's awful. And so hopefully we'll get to MicroPython shortly after. And seeing as we've already got working STM32WL support, it should come along pretty quickly. It should be just drop in drivers for the various sensors and away you go. It's a good podcast anyway. He's an interesting guy. Standard library coverage. Oliver, you're in my project. It's now on the front page of the wiki as requested from last month. And Mike, I've also put your awesome MicroPython on the front page too. And there's a couple of other useful links there. As I mentioned last time, we need your help. If you have a little bit of time, it's actually surprisingly fun work. Oliver and I literally started from the top of the list. It was a week or so ago. And we got to the AIFC library, which is probably one of the more useless libraries in the standard library. And that's saying something. There's quite a lot of junk in the Python standard library. anyway, we were just, okay, we'll just tackle this from the top down. An AIFC we didn't have any support for, so we started looking at it. It relied on another library called Chunk. Chunk came across pretty nicely. That was pretty good. We only had to make like one small change. And then we thought we were all home and hosed with AIFC, but it turns out it uses internally in the bowels a small C module to do some parsing. So it uses audio OP, if I remember right. Is that correct, Oliver?
Sounds correct.
Yeah.
Nipped us right at the end.
Right at the, literally, I just opened up an MR, like a PR, going, yeah, this is going to work. So Chunk on itself will actually pick apart the IFF format and give you blobs of data, and then AIFC is meant to absorb those blobs of data. So these two audio files use Chunk to pick apart the data, and then AIFC can read and write those particular files based on that. But it needs that C library to support most of the audio files that this thing uses. But it was surprisingly fun. Like, you just sort of pick apart and dig in and go, okay, there's an import statement here of another library, better go chase that one up, try and get that to work. And yeah, if you've got a couple of hours spare and you want to learn about what's in the CPython standard library and make MicroPython more useful, just pick one of these off and have a go at it.
Yeah, it's fun, interesting stuff. And if Matt and I continue the rate we're currently going, we'll be done by 2072, just in time to the end of lockdown, maybe.
Lockdown, I was going to say the same joke, yeah. Anyway, I have just started another Coursera course. It's a freebie by Sean Heimel, who's, yeah, he's got his angle. The bow tie and the super nerd look is what he's looking for, what he's shooting for. This course looks kind of interesting because it's computer vision stuff with like machine learning. It's based around the OpenMV H7, which I happen to have, and the Raspberry Pi 4, which I happen to have. So yeah, 3-week course. It's about 10 hours of content. I don't know how much more is required for homework and whatnot, but 10 hours of content a week in terms of just watching videos and stuff. Of course, probably halve that if you watch it in double time. But it looks pretty good. It starts off doing some ML identification through the camera, so just determining what's on the camera, and then it takes it to identifying objects and then identifying the things in those objects. So it does bounding boxes, and then so yeah, we'll see how that goes. But Sean's an excellent speaker. If you have seen any of his content, is great. He used to work for SparkFun, has done and since gone freelance since leaving SparkFun a couple of years ago, I guess. And has done some work for DigiKey as well. But you can go look at his YouTube stuff. He's got a lot of really clear presentations. And there was another one which I haven't tried, but I have trouble saying this word, MakerDemi. It's got another one which is talking about MicroPython on the Arduino Nano Connect, the RP2040 device. That looks interesting. It's more of a beginner style thing, but it looks quite good. And while we're on the topic of Arduino, they made an announcement with OpenMV. I was hoping Damien would be around for this because I wanted to get the inside scoop. But yeah, Arduino made a very big splash about supporting OpenMV and MicroPython on their devices using OpenMV. Particularly for they called out the Nano RP2040 Connect and the Nano 33 BLE. And so they're also sort of saying that the OpenMV IDE, which I think some of you might have seen when I've demonstrated in the past, is sort of the alternative to the Arduino IDE. So yeah, I guess we'll see what comes of that, but that looks like how they're getting the MicroPython support on their new devices. Also, the Portena H7 is quite an expensive device, and so they've recognized that and chopped a few things out and released the light version as well.
Matt, did you see all the tweets and memes on Twitter about the silicon shortage because of all the missing components on that board? If you look, there's like all those pads everywhere that got nothing on them.
So you reckon they just haven't populated and then sold it as a light version?
Right. It's like, you know, let's not make a new board. Let's just take the existing board and take off half the components. Right. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, because one of them is a crypto chip, which is quite expensive and difficult to source. So, yeah, that's interesting. Tiny Sewer. I have made this lineup. That's not something that's in any marketing material that I've seen, but MicroPython can now genuinely claim to help move poo. This is a Hackster.io article on how to create like a device to detect errors in sewers, and this is a really big problem. There's there's an awful lot of kilometers of poo carrying pipes around the world, and this one it's really detailed article talking about how they use one of the existing sewer robots that's used to run through a sewer and clean things out, but they needed to plonk on a device which again uses machine learning to detect problems in the sewer, whether it's clogging or problems in the damage to the pipes. So they're using again TinyML. They're using one of these Arduino and the Portento H7s with and it's all powered by OpenMV and MicroPython and TinyML again. So quite an interesting article. Talks about the 3D case as well, because they need to make it robust. You don't really want stuff that's in a sewer getting inside your circuitry. So yeah, I thought it was really, really interesting. I don't have many inside photos of it though. This
Get some
one,
photos, but they're pretty shitty, right?
yeah, that's right. This one I meant to chase up, I never got around to it, but there's another watch running MicroPython out in the world. I'm starting to lose count now. That must be like the 6th, 7th, 8th, I don't know. CircuitPython 7 was released. Congrats to the CircuitPython team, Scott and co. I guess the headlines for me were that they've introduced a BLE workflow. So previously, one of the differences between CircuitPython and MicroPython was that CircuitPython required USB support because the main workflow support was to edit files on a USB mass storage device. MicroPython doesn't impose that restriction. It allows access over serial. But with this release, they've also relaxed that restriction and allow a BLE workflow. So for some devices that have BLE but not USB, in particular the Microbit V2 was, I guess, one of the main chips for this. Yeah, they've built a way to connect with your phone, with the tablet, and program the device in that way, which is pretty cool. They've also gone to some great lengths to upgrade to latest MicroPython, or pretty close to the latest MicroPython. And Scott, the lead developer of CircuitPython, went through a lot of really detailed videos on how that happened. Worth a watch. But there was a lot of other changes. Depending on what you're interested in, there were some important ones. I think we'll try and pick up some of these things and backport them to MicroPython, like Unicode file name support on FATFS would be useful. Some of these other ones are actually we wouldn't pick out. Like there's AdEx, there's these handful of modules which we could pick up wholesale, and then Ollie, we can tick off another couple of things on our list. But these are all actually written in C, and they're not particularly like I would rather see these written in Python. There's no real reason to do them in C. They're just taking up space. They'd be much better as an optional module in Python if we can get away with it. But there's some other interesting ones too, like there was camera support added for the S2. Yeah, some other bits and pieces. If there's anything in here that you're really interested in, let us know, and we could possibly help backport it up to MicroPython.
Have they got interrupts yet?
No. I have heard them talking more about async IO and interrupts and concurrency. Limor was talking about that a little bit in one of her recent videos. And they're looking at different ways that could be done. I suspect, it makes sense to support it the way we've done it, but I know that interrupts in particular is something they're trying to avoid, just for the nature of their aiming at beginners. So yeah.
Yeah, their arguments make sense. I'm curious whether that'll hold the test of time or whether they'll find a beginner-friendly way of implementing them.
Yeah, we'll see.
As long as their friendly way is not reinventing the wheel and making it completely different.
Interrupts with 700 wrappers.
Yeah, maybe. I've mentioned Kevin McAleer before. He does a lot of stuff with robotics, with education as well. But he keeps releasing really interesting videos that I'm having trouble keeping up with all of his stuff. But he's doing a lot with the Raspberry Pi Pico, with MicroPython, and with various devices. Go check these out if they're of interest to you. I thought the tic-tac-toe one was pretty cool. It's got this little robot that moves and then stamps like the across of the circle. Cool. Snack size. Okay, a couple of little bits and pieces. The YARN Developer Summits on the October 19th to 21st. And there was a couple of MicroPython sessions that were announced, so I found out about it. I haven't checked if registration's free or not for this one. I'll go do that. If someone's bored, go have a look now, please. Conduino, I don't know what his real name is, but Conduino is fairly prolific on Twitter, particularly around MicroPython updates. And they've taken some ST7735 LCD driver and made it a ton faster, which is great.
Is it native or is it just still MicroPython? Sorry, is it C or?
No, I think he's done it in Python, but it's more about loading images from file a lot quicker. I think it's like it's reading a whole chunk and blitting it rather than doing it line by line or something, which the old driver might have done. But I haven't looked into all the details, so that's why it's snack sized. Yeah. I've just got this one here because the Docker containers that I've started publishing seem to be getting a little more activity, probably because I'm promoting them more. But if you want to run the Unix port in Docker, you can do that very easily now. If you want to grab some containers that can build MicroPython, that's also available. We're going to continue to build on that. Andrew, you and I have got some work to pull in some of yours and publish them and automate them. But yeah, it just makes it easier to develop with and for MicroPython. I talked about deck last month, the month before, and then I stumbled on someone else who's written a pure Python deck, which is very feature rich. So I'm hoping we can. I haven't tried porting it yet. It's targeting CPython, so we'll see how hard that is to pull back and how much memory it consumes. Hot off the press, the ESP32 PWM support has now been, well, we've now got PWM support on the ESP32. It was merged to mainline yesterday.
I didn't see it got merged. I must have missed that.
Just merged. I don't know if it was yesterday or early this morning.
That's so good.
Yeah, it's great. It's been a long time coming. It now works on not just the ESP32, but the S2, the S3, and the C3. At least it should work on the S3. And it uses all of the available timers and channels that ESP32 has to offer. So that's great. In the past, we only had one channel available on ESP32. So it really restricted what you could do with PWM. And I know it's been the bane of Xion's existence for about a year or so. Yeah.
Yay.
I can't remember the guy's name who's submitted this, but it was a really neat, good implementation.
It was really well done.
Yeah, it's really happy to see it.
And he caches all the timers and stuff. So like if you set up a PWM with a frequency that's already being used, it doesn't use up another timer. It then it shares it with the existing timer or the existing other PWM that's using that frequency, which is really clever. So.
Yeah. As soon as you change the base frequency, it'll create another timer if it's different. And yeah, it's quite neat. PyConline. Okay, this is the slide from back then. It was so probably a few of us here went to PyConline. There's only a couple of talks I wanted to talk about, but I guess just in general, the vibe's a bit. It's definitely different. It's definitely different online, but it's even this year was a bit different from last year. The organisers have done a really good job about presenting everything online and trying to integrate all these people for the weekend that PyCon was on. But it's still not the same as having an in-person conference. So I'm looking forward to the next time we get together in person. But two that I would like to call out is the Kookaberry talk, which is Get Cooking with the Cookberry by Renee Noble. Renee gave a great talk. She's a teacher that uses the Cookberry with her students. Really interesting to hear what they're doing with it. So,
What's a Cookberry?
so the Cookberry is it's a device that's kind of like an Australian version of a microbit, I guess you could say. It's based around STM F1. It's quite a small STM. Interesting a bunch of features. The link I've got here, you can go have a look at what is in it. We'll have a look perhaps at the end if we've got time. But they're the guys who are building the Cookberry, and Damien's worked with them as well, at trying to get this device into schools around Australia. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Sploot Code was the other one. Katie Bell, who always gives a really good talk. She's been working on this thing called Sploot Code for a little while now. Also sort of targeting education, but trying to fill the gaps, I guess, between like the block-based development sort of methodology compared to the textual-based side. Like she does a lot of teaching of sort of slightly older children, I guess, early teens. And they quickly advance past the point where the block-based sort of web interfaces are very useful to them. But making the jump then to like textual full-on Python is quite a big jump. And so Sploot is meant to, she figures it's a good in-between. It uses a web interface, so it means you can't get syntax errors because you're sort of dragging and dropping bits and pieces, but it's much, much closer to actual Python code. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting thing. She's actually gotten CPython running in the browser using, what's that, Rust? Andrew, you'll know this. I'm hoping. It's got some play on the word of pyiodine.
Yeah, I think it is pyiodine.
That sounds right. I know you've talked about it before. Anyway, CPython running in the browser, then she runs like an SVG interface that has representations for all of the common primitives in Python, and then can actually run the CPython in the browser. Katie's good friends with like Jim and a few other, I've met her a few times, and she would be keen to get MicroPython support in this as well, which would be, if you think about it, it would be actually a really good mix. You could actually develop this in the browser against a simulator, much like our Unicorn build would work. But then you could actually publish it using Web Serial to a device if it was connected. So I reckon that'd be pretty cool. There's a fair bit of work in that. So I'm not going to put my hand up for this one. I've got enough on. But if that tickles someone's funny bone or whatever, go for it. I reckon it's a really cool project. The Meetup blog, I was hoping to announce tonight that it was up to date, but I am still a couple of videos short. I've processed 5 videos because we were about 3 months behind. And the audio was really bad in the May and June videos, but they are now done. They're published. They are not public yet. I'll turn them on shortly. And August, the recording was really good. So I don't think Lachlan's on tonight, but he allowed us to use Dropbox to record that last time. It was really good. The quality was heaps better. And thanks to Ollie for digging up the June videos, which I didn't have or I'd lost or something. I will try and get to them very soon. It's very close to being able to publish all of these. So I'm sorry they're not up yet. It will be soon. And I think that's my last slide. There's my last slide. So I'll quickly show you Sploot Code because it's worth a look. That's what it looks like. And so you can print stuff and you can edit things and you can run things. Hello, what is your name? My name is Matt. Hello, Matt. So you can see it's much more like regular Python rather than those block-based languages that have sort of like the while loops and whatever represented in weird and wonderful ways. I like it. All right, it's cool. That's about it.